Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we'll go from the Mojoverse to Earth 616 to the Bedford Savon apartments in Brooklyn, New York, in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the Uncanny Chris.
And I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
Alliance, assemble. All right, volume 75. We've hit another milestone. So we're getting we got that 75. It's feeling good. End of the week. How's it treating you, Brent?
I can't complain. Episode 75. What was my first episode? How long until I'm on more episodes than Travis was on?
Oh, that's
I'm
be
gonna
the
have to
big
figure that
milestone
out.
at that point. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to figure that out. Not even counting all the times I filled in. I'm gonna have to figure that out.
yeah, you got to figure that out. Maybe by the end of the show or the next show, you'll have that down.
He's been on a few of them since he left.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I gotta be getting close.
Yeah, it'll be interesting when you get to that point. It's just saying, all right, finally you have overtaken it. But for those of you watching, but you're about to hear, we have a special guest joining us this week. If you have been a listener of World's Finest True Believers, you have heard his voice on that. He's guested a number of times on there. He is Adam Lawson. Why don't you say hi to everyone, Adam?
Hello. Hey, Chris, Brett, thanks for having me on. And yes, Chris, thanks for having me back again and again. It's awesome of you to support indie creators in the midst of the ocean of amazing Marvel stuff. You know that there's a little room for some indie guys, and I appreciate you bringing me on.
Yeah, no problem. So for those of you who don't know, I'm going to give you a quick bio, and feel free to add to it if I'm missing anything. I know you're the creator of such graphic novels as Kill Journals, The Eighth, and Asunder, and you were the showrunner of the YouTube premium show Escape the Night, and director of Will Wheaton's Tabletop. And you've just launched your latest Indiegogo campaign called Kids and Monsters. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it as I pull it up on screen for everyone?
Sure. No, Kids and Monsters is as a tale of teens whose parents are, as a divorce is looming, and they begin to see these cracks in the world, and they realize, and they see these red beasts are crawling out of it, and the world is being split in two, and they find these backpacks with monsters in them, much like genies who lived in lamps, and these monsters become their allies in this war with these beasts. Because at the core of it, this story is a metaphor for teens whose family is on the verge of splitting apart, and it's played out in this supernatural war with these red beasts who are trying to rip the two worlds: the world within, the place you and I don't know about, and the world that we do know about here. He's trying to rip them in two so everyone will be miserable. And these monsters have sworn an oath to protect the two realms and to keep them together, and they become allies with these teens. So as they're essentially trying to save their family, they're also trying to save the world. And so I love these kind of tales in my heart where there is a beating heart to it, right? It's really about kids trying to survive something they can't control, which is a potential shattering of their family, which is frightening for any young kid. And yet they get to play it out with some big beasts and monsters and mighty weapons, and they get to overcome their weaknesses through this adventurous world that can hopefully save their own family. So that's the core of what the tale is about. And I think with my last books, Chris, as we've talked about them, is always trying to find what's the beating heart, and then what's the fantastical world it's in, right? And in this, go ahead, Chris.
No, go for it. No.
And in this world, it plays on this mythology that for any Dungeons and Dragons player, they'll get it, of the bag of holding, except it's a backpack of holding, right? You open up the backpack, and it's really kind of the doorway to a pocket dimension where this monster's keep or castle is, right? And then they come out of it. And these backpacks are hidden in the world within. And they can only be seen by these kids when they've overcome certain weaknesses or problems, and then it becomes manifest to them. And the monster inside is usually a reflection of them in some way. Like this kid you see on the cover, this is Gatsby, and his monster is this woodland alchemist, that brews potions, right? And Mally, you see this blonde girl here, his sister, she's full of all this anger because of what's happening, and so her monster is this ogre berserker. And so it gives us these levels of metaphor. Then they get to meet this other side of themselves, or this part of themselves as a monster. right? That's helping them out in this cause. And I love this idea of the idea that, like, in your backpack, like genies that live in lamps, there was a backpack that served as the same purpose, right? And out came this monster to be your ally. And for this campaign, I always like to do, Chris, what's fun about Indiegogo or Kickstarter launching your indie books is you can kind of do something special with them, right? And so, with my earlier ones, I did a leather bound, I did slipcases. This is going to be a hardcover book. It's oversized, so it's A4, which is like an inch and a half bigger on the sides and top. So when you open it up, it becomes this bigger sprawl, kind of like a European comic, and really, I love that they're like, oh, this is what makes this special when it comes in the mail after you've been waiting instead of picking it up at your LCS, right? And so this is what Kids and Monsters is, and it has this incredible art by Maxie Dallow, who I think is the next Daniel Warren Johnson to be, and Daniel Warren Johnson's colorist, Mike Spicer, is our colorist on the book, who did Beta Ray Bill and Wonder Woman Dead Earth. I think best colorist in the business. And so it has these gripping colors, and Max is a traditional artist. So there's something about these pages that come from an artist who's really inking it out, versus digitally. Not that that's bad either, but there's something kind of raw about it. And he uses lots of speed lines and other sort of manga techniques in his Western style that really bring it to life. And I think when you think about what makes a comic book exciting, at least for me, right, is that there is some sense of fun and adventure in it. And wouldn't you say, Brent? I mean, you're looking for some sort of fun and adventure.
Otherwise, why are you reading? I mean,
that's right. It's just simply it. Why are you here in this sense of fun and adventure? And then you're looking for characters that you can emote with or relate to, in some way. And I think why I keep coming back sometimes to these stories with younger kids is that I think for all of us, there's still that kid in us. And one of the reasons why we still hang on to our, superheroes and, the MCU and all these things is because it kind of taps us into these really childhood-like feelings. And so, with this book, I wrote it, I did the layouts, and I letter my own books, which for anybody who is an indie creator, I think as a writer, you kind of owe it to yourself to become your own letterist, and to learn Clip Studio, and it's only $50 and you can get good at it in a year. And then you can keep rewriting all the way until it goes to press. Cause there's not someone in the middle, you know what I mean, Chris? And I'm sure, Brett, you probably felt too, anytime you're creating something, there's always those moments in the night where you're like, my gosh, that line is terrible. And you have to, you know what I mean? And you've got to rush down to your computer and salvage, your comic book before it goes out with a terrible piece of dialogue, or a sound effect that you've been thinking about that's just not landing. And I, at least for me, I really enjoy sound effects in books. I like to layer them in, so you kind of have to roto out the image and you tuck the sound behind the character so it feels nested in. And then also too, I think there's a real art in being able to create the sound of characters in the balloons and in the font work. And that's really, and that way when your comic book is done, you're like, hey, that part of it was me. I drew that one part of it, even though I'm not Maxie or Mike. There's that connection, and that's what's cool about comic books. As Chris, as you talked earlier, I've made a lot of television. Well over 100 episodes and many movies, and it's there's a big crowd of people. On Escape the Night, there would be 250 people on set on a shoot day, and so whereas with a comic book, it can be really handmade, and that's its own special thing.
Yeah, it's very personal. You've had pretty much all your campaigns have done well, and congratulations on if you're watching the video right now. You've crossed your threshold of making your goal, so now everything's just kind of the extras and building it on. That's awesome. It's a really
great. It's great.
Really cool concept.
Oh, thank you guys. Yeah, I feel like the story initially, kind of came out with this idea of bag of holding from D&D from back from my childhood. And then I was playing a storytelling game with my nieces and nephews, and they wanted monsters to help them. Right. And that's sort of, it was the incubator for this. And then I thought, what's the most frightening thing that can happen to a kid? And that's your family being torn apart. I mean, outside of like getting kidnapped and killed, but within the realm of it, it feels fun. And so, and then I think what I love about crafting this too is for each kid, there's a different pack with a different monster. Mally, the teenage girl in it, she gets a boyfriend right away at the beginning. His name's Jin Soo. And he just moved to the States from Korea after his parents split. So he has this connection. And I wanted their relationship to not be like a traditional teen romance, which is about, do we get together? They think I'm cute. I think they're cute. Right. But instead, they get together right away because Mally's kind of aggressive and Jinsu's kind of mysterious. And then they have to figure out how to make their relationship work while on this adventure. So it creates another little mirror of their parents' struggles. And for Jinsu, his monster is named Kato, and he is this cat-like creation that's like part stone, part cat, and Hapkido Master, which he controls with a remote control because he's quite a video gamer. And so his monster has its own unique expression. And I love that thought. And I hope to do a board game that connects with that idea where you can select a kid and a monster to go with it.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So, if you are interested in learning more, if you're just listening at that point, go to Indiegogo, look up Kids and Monsters, or go to the show notes on either the YouTube or the audio, and we'll have a link there. And definitely give it a look, give it a back if you're really interested. Again, Adam does great work. Every one of his campaigns has been successful, so you're going to get something special with this. So we wish you all the luck, and again, congratulations on making your goal, and again, more success coming your way.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that, buddy. Thank you.
So we have some fun stuff to talk about. I'm assuming, I guess, Adam, are you any sort of a Spider-Man fan tonight?
I mean, I have done some Spider-Man in my time.
we got a lot to talk about with it. The infamous Empire big expose dropped today for some of us. Brent dropped last night.
Yeah, but before we do, you should probably go ahead and plug the rest of the network.
Yes. Let's plug the network. So we have 8 shows. We've got my show, World's Finest True Believers, alternating bi-weekly on Mondays with Ranger Alliance. And Ranger Alliance is coming at you next week. This week, I was very timely. We had a new episode for World's Finest this week with a returning guest, Daryl, the resident Daryl over at the Loop Rose podcast, came back on to talk about the great, right now, only one volume of the series, Witches by Scott Snyder and Jacques. So check that out. It's a very, very timely, series. Very, very timely with Halloween coming up.
Amazing series, by the way. I think Snyder's best work.
Oh, yeah, definitely very awesome. So check that out. Tuesdays, we got DC Alliance. Wednesdays, Superhero Discussion. Star Wars Alliance on Thursdays. Marvel Alliance on Fridays. A walk through the multiverse bi-weekly on Saturdays. And a slice of film bi-weekly on Sundays. DC Alliance goes live on the Geekverse feed on Monday nights. Star Wars Alliance at 9 o'clock, Star Wars Alliance goes live on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this show, Marvel Alliance, goes live on the Geekverse YouTube channel on Thursday nights at 9:10. And each one of those podcasts has their own separate solo feed in addition to the network feed. So check them all out. And we also have a Patreon. So if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we want to thank our patrons. We can't do this without your support. We've got 2 tiers. $1 tiers, our tip jar, saying, hey, we're doing a good job. We appreciate you. And then we've got our $5 tier that gives you ad-free episodes, early access episodes, and Patreon exclusive episodes. So again, thank you, patrons. And then if you can't join us on Patreon, we totally understand. If you can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, whatever platform of choice may be, either the Marvel Alliance feed or the network feed itself, we really appreciate it. And as always, we got to plug our sponsors. And so first up, we have OrganicPriceBooks.com. Organic Price Books, the official sponsor of Marvel Alliance. JP and the crew of the OPB have got it going on. And so if you use that code MarvelGUA at checkout, you can get $2 off every single order. Use it as many times as you want. It lets them know where you came from. the new pre-orders have come up for live. We've got a new omnibus, Wakanda, the World of, that is looking at everything going on in the Ta-Nehisi Coates run. Marvel is leaning hard into these years. Last one, they did June 1961. Now they're doing June 1962. The infamous introduction of Spider-Man in every single comic that Marvel had issue 1 produced in Omni format. So check that out again. Marvel GUA at checkout, $2 off every single order. So we want to thank Organic Price Books for being our continued sponsor. And for this month, Manscaped is a sponsor of the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. Get 20% off and free shipping using the promo code GUAPOD at manscaped.com for all your manscaping needs. Keep everything fresh, right, Brent?
That's right. They got the weed whacker, they got the lawnmower, everything you need.
Everything you need for all your personal upkeep needs. So definitely check that out, GUAPod at checkout. And finally, we've got some Final Network plugs. First up, November 6th, in a week, the Geek First 24-hour charity stream goes live on November 6th. So 24 hours, Geek First raising money for the British Columbia Children's Hospital. We've got some gauntlet challenges happening. We've got some Travis Snell doing some belt challenges. And then at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the big trivia Team Wolf, led by Travis Snell, going against Team Ranger against Clay. The grudge match continues for all the marbles. I don't know outside of bragging rights if anything else is on the line, but
those are enough. Have you listened to Snell and Clay talk? Those are all they need.
Every time it's worth it at that point. Apparently, he is going to be guesting next week on one of the Geekverse news episodes. That should be interesting.
I heard that.
So we're looking forward to that. As you know, listeners, I am hosting the Marvel trivia portion of the night. You have Travis Hines looking at doing the DC side, and who is doing the Star Wars side. If I want to make sure, we got to be questioning this one at that point. Who is doing Star Wars?
I don't know. It's a good question.
That would be Taylor from Geekverse at that point doing Star Wars at that
He's
point.
It's Taylor in the Star Wars? Okay.
Yeah, Taylor's on the Star Wars at that point. And his heart I know is in Team Wolf, so we'll see exactly of how that's gonna work.
He must be crushed. There's no Ghost Rider in Star Wars, so
I know. I'm gonna may have to add a Ghost Rider question to my feed. I'm working on those questions right now. So again, check that out. November 6th, 24-hour charity stream. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then for our feed, Marvel Lines, we've got a review week this upcoming week, Brent. We are excited. It is Eternals. So on Friday night at 9:10, we go live with our review panel. 9:10, everything talked about Eternals, all spoilers, everything coming at you. So with that, since there is no Disney Plus show this next week, not until, a couple more weeks in November, we will not be doing a double episode. The only way Brent and I do a double episode next week is if somehow a No Way Home trailer number 2 drops. That is probably the only way we do it. So right now, no double episode. We will go live on Friday night with the Eternals review, which will drop on the feeds on Saturday. And we want to thank Joe from A Walk Through the Multiverse. He will take over on Friday morning with a new episode of A Walk Through the Multiverse. Will drop its newest episode on Friday morning. So you will have something in your feeds, listeners, for Friday morning. So we hope you check out our Eternals review. We're very excited to see. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be, from what we keep on hearing, a different Marvel movie than we've seen before. I'm excited to see it. I like seeing some changes, and so when are you seeing it, Brent, on Thursday?
Thursday night, 7:00 Central, and then Friday afternoon I have tickets. So unless something comes up, I should only see it. I should get to see it at least twice before we review.
Gotcha. Yeah,
that's a committed reviewer. That's a committed reviewer. The double viewing. Yeah,
I prefer 2 viewings when possible, and if it's the MCU, it will be possible. I will make it possible.
Yeah,
I took off half a day of work.
Yeah, all in the game, we've got some of the review scores. We know, acknowledge the elephant in the room. It is right now one of the lowest scores. It's the lowest scored one on Rotten Tomatoes for reviews. But as with always, we're going to be the judge of our own stuff at that point. Is Chloe one and done? We'll see.
I mean, there's no way to know.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you this: if the audience responds well, if they're happy with the box office, they're not going to care what the Rotten Tomatoes score is. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. It won't matter as long as the audience reacts positively to it, and we just won't know that until this time next week.
Yep. So you'll have to check us out on Friday night or Saturday morning when that drops. So, all right, I think I've got everything. It's time to get into some Spider-Man action. So Empire magazine had teased last week that they're going to be dropping a new story all covering all aspects of Spider-Man No Way Home. It went live officially this morning. We're going to break down all the stuff. So if you choose not to, you don't have to read it if you don't want to. You can listen to all our thoughts at this point. Brent, I know, even though I'm a big Spider-Man fan, I'm going to let you start this one off and kind of start our breakdown of the article.
Yeah, I was definitely looking forward to this one when I found out. And I just figured, I'd catch all the write-ups and stuff. I'm like, I'm not going to go find an Empire magazine and whatever. I'll catch all the write-ups on it. And then my wife's like, I think Empire's on Apple News. Well, I have Apple News because it's part of my Apple iCloud subscription. I just never bothered to actually look at it. Sure enough, it was on there and it was available to read last night. I didn't even have to wait for Thursday. And I saw it pop up. I was very excited for that. And I thought there were lots of good little tidbits and quotes and a few little teases and stuff. But this first one, right out of the gate, Tom Holland and his history with Doc Ock, talking about being at the movie theater when Spider-Man 2 came out when he was 8 years old. It's, just to date myself, that was the movie I saw with my wife on our first date was Spider-Man 2. And he just says he remembers seeing Alfred Molina with the costume and the arms and his glasses and just how terrifying he was of him. How awesome is that he now gets to play off of Alfred Molina in the upcoming Spider-Man movie?
Yeah, what do you think about that, Adam? I mean, you kind of said a little bit offline just about that.
Yeah, that's a really touching part about this. That can happen when you build a legacy like this, right? That like the 8-year-old is now Spider-Man, right, himself, right? And how beautiful that is that he's going to get to stand in the shoes that he once dreamed about being, right? This is like this, speaking about, sort of American dream, and also like the idea of like Spider-Man as a character kind of goes from a nobody to superhero, right? And in the same way, Tom Holland. And so I'm really excited about that, and I'm hoping. I feel that Tom Holland has really done such a great job at interpreting the role of Spider-Man, and I love what he does with it. And so I'm really interested to see if that brings a new level of heart or a new level of passion from him, right? That he's like, I'm now where I was once, I'm now the thing I was once looking at. I wonder if that will change what it certainly means to him to do it.
Yeah, definitely. The article went on further to kind of rehash again, us who've kind of live and breathe this stuff almost every day. They did talk about the possibility of, Spider-Man possibly losing the rights to Spider-Man going back to Sony. Brent, I know you've talked about this over and over again. What's the Cliff Notes version?
The Cliff Notes version is, to go back a little ways, Marvel, they were going bankrupt. They sold the licensing rights for the movies to Sony. Years later, Sony's in a position where they could use some help with the Spider-Man franchise. Feige and company are in a position where they could offer that help. They came together. They gave us Civil War. They gave us Infinity War. They gave us Endgame, Homecoming, Far From Home, and then the table fell out from under everything. Table falls out. So now most Spider-Man fans call it the divorce. There are all those articles, August 2019, Spider-Man's going back to Sony only. And Tom Holland said during this time he went over to Amy Pascal's house, who was like, she's effectively the Kevin Feige type role for the Sony Spider-Man.
Sure, yeah.
And just that he drove over to her house and they were just sitting and talking for hours, trying to like come up with ideas of what were they going to do without access to the rest of Marvel. But thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. Everyone realizes we're gonna be more successful together than apart, and hey, they're gonna make more money together than apart. And really, that's ultimately what it comes down to. And in September they came back together. And there's this quote from Kevin Feige about this that was very interesting to me. That said, "quote I don't anticipate us going through that emotional roller coaster or putting the fans through that emotional roller coaster again," end quote. And yes, I very vividly remember that was quite the emotional roller coaster. I had several tweets saying, "Has anybody checked on Britek Prime today?" I remember that.
Yeah.
That quote, woo.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, especially with the confidence that Feige, he's perfect in this role. He's the perfect politician when it comes to this stuff. He's going to say just enough or not enough to even make the fans go crazy. But this seems quite definitive in the sense of looks like we're not going to get another divorce. It seems to be that, Tom Holland crying over the phone and begging for the character to stay within the MCU or at least continue on. Adam, what do you kind of feel about that? Are you thinking, with what hints we've seen of this movie or the rumors we have, do you think we're going to continue seeing a Spider-Man continue on in the MCU?
I mean, I really think so. I mean, I think, speaking from, I work in Hollywood and I'm in the movie business a lot, and I feel like, Sony is always been somewhat of a roller coaster, an up and down player in the movie game, right? They've had some highs and lots of lows, and Disney is much more of a steady monster, if you will, right? They are kind of the king of the box office, and at least certainly over the last 2 decades have taken that throne. Their share of the U.S. box office and globally also is incredibly disproportionate, but not for no reason, but because they've done, really, really amazing films. And so I think that the idea of just from a business standpoint, just from inside behind the closed doors of it, seems somewhat absurd for Sony to take that ride, especially too if it makes fans angry, and then they go off on their own, and the film performs poorly, and then they damage the brand. You know what I mean? There's a lot at stake for that from a business standpoint. That now and ultimately, probably at the core of it, what Sony was doing was claiming divorce so they could redefine a deal with Disney financially. It is often what those circumstances mean in the movie business. Little inside baseball there.
Yeah, the report mentioned that neither side was very happy with the financials of their current deal. And I didn't quite understand that because Sony had a 95% cut of the financials of the current deal on their initial deal. Now they actually have 75%. Now I don't know if anything's changed as far as merchandise goes because Sony didn't have Jack on the merchandise side, but it was just kind of an odd line to me when I was reading it. It's like, man, if I was Sony, I'd be thrilled with a 95% cut of $1 billion movie in Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah, you gotta keep gaining that money. They want every inch they can.
Yeah, because the way accounting is done in the movie business is quite convoluted. So you can sound like you have a wonderful deal that you never see a dollar of. It's very easy to happen. I've signed those deals sometimes myself, where you then never see a dollar. So while it might appear as like a 95%, really it's 95% of the least valuable portion.
Which is very possible, and that's why people who I've said for years, like Marvel and Disney should not offer a couple $1 billion for Spider-Man because he's not worth that much to them because all they'd be getting is the movie rights back. They already have all the merchandise and they can make cartoons and they have the comic books. Sure. And so it's not like when they did like with when Disney bought Star Wars for $4 billion or Marvel for $4 billion, where they got all of those revenue streams. Right now, Disney effectively has every revenue stream but the box office, and now they even have. I've heard different reports, so somewhere between a quarter to a third of that stream as well.
Yeah, S-Pub's in the chat saying it seems there might be a bigger Spider-Man deal with Sony that we don't know about. Yeah, I mean, again, they might come out finally after No Way Home about where the future lies with Spider-Man in the MCU. The article kind of goes on further, delving into what I kind of term the realities Doctor Strange opens. And I found this interesting. This is where the day before the article came out, someone had screenshotted a part of that and kind of got people really excited until they found the context of it and said, oh, maybe not. But it said, in essence, Doctor Strange's spell seems to open doors connecting Peter's reality to many other realities, including the worlds of Spider-Man movies that predate the MCU. The worlds created by the director Sam Raimi and Mark Webb, worlds in which Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin is still tearing around, flying on his flying sled, glider. I would say glider would have been more accurate. Worlds where Reyes Ethan's the Lizard, Thomas Hayden Church's Sandman, and Jamie Foxx's Electro. At this early stage, team No Way Home is no hurry to confirm or deny appearances. "Quote unquote, I can confirm those are rumors," deadpans Watts. But one cat is very much out of the bag, or accurately, octopus. So when people saw that part of the quote, looking at like just calling out the names, oh my gosh, they're confirming it right there. Not really. But why would they call out those particular names in the article and the actors associated with it?
I mean, this is straight up, when having done a lot of television, this is, there's straight up, there's the fun idea, because we, especially MCU lives in a world of buzz, right? And discussion. Like the three of us sitting here talking about, like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And there's nothing more fun for them than to drop an article that then elicits endless discussion on purpose, on accident.
Yeah, and they keep trying to say it, and I had to look up the date, and it was over a year ago when Jamie Foxx posted to Instagram that he was back and that he wasn't going to have the same blue look, but that he was going to be back in the movies. I mean, we saw the pumpkin bomb in that trailer. Melina's already confirmed. This is one of those things where I genuinely believe, like, it's not a question of like, are we going to see some of the characters from these prior movies? It's really just a question of which specific characters will pop up. Will it be this character? Will it be that character? Or will it be them both? Well, I mean, that we're going to find out. But there is some sort of tie. Like, that's not questionable at this point. Like, there's some tie to these movies.
I mean, again, they go into the idea of, Amy Pascal getting asked a question about, will we see Venom based on the end credit scene of Venom Let There Be Carnage? She said, I'll never tell you and who produced the Venom movie, but it was a lot of fun to do, and we love Tom Hardy. You don't put that in the end credit scene of that movie, looking at the scene from Far From Home with a new kind of additional J. Jonah Jameson difference at that point, without saying we're gonna see Tom Hardy's Venom in this movie. It's just a question of when and for how long.
I maintain, I will die on this hill. If Venom has 5 minutes of screen time or more, he needs to be in the next trailer, because that will be good marketing for the Venom movie that's still in theaters, which is doing well. They can just get him in even more. And if he's not, fine. But that credit scene confirms we will see Venom and Spider-Man together. Yep. That will happen. If it's not in No Way Home, Spider-Man ends up in the Venomverse.
I mean, there's been a long time waiting for that. That is the Pacquiao Mayweather fight, right? That has been in the works, in the hearts and minds of people for some time. So I think they've got to deliver that at some point, right? And I'm with you, but it's like you teed that up. They whispered it, right?
Yep, and we're gonna will it into existence. As Bob said, No Way Home might be a study in 5-dimensional chess. If you remember what Scott O'Connell said last week as our guest, saying that, nobody understands right now Sony's marketing strategy with this.
Again, when all is said and done, I would love I know I said it last week. I would love to speak with their marketing department and just be like, walk me through your plans. Tell me what was going on, because regardless of what it's been fun. Like, I was enjoying the lack of a trailer. I thought it was hilarious how riled up people were getting. And I think it's been fun, and nobody knows, like, nothing. This has not been anywhere near like what we'd normally by now. We'd already have like 2 trailers and 4 posters and maybe even character posters. And we have all this marketing out, and we have jack squat. We have 1 trailer and 1 Empire article, and I kind of dig it.
We have a month and a half till and not seen much, but yeah, so before we continue on, let's take our first ad break. As you know, listeners, these ads keep the lights on in the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud, so give you that 3 count to turn that volume down. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, and let's continue delving into the fun parts of the the article. So let's, Brent, talk about, like, Doctor Strange is the quote unquote new mentor of this third movie at that point. Benedict Cumberbatch actually had a line in here about that.
He did. So Cumberbatch said, quote, "There's a shade of the Stark relationship. It's not as intimate to begin with because of how experienced a superhero he is. It's a strange dynamic, and it kind of shifts into something far more parental and corrective. And then it shifts again. That shifts again is interesting. I definitely am wondering what it shifts into. But for me, I think it's clear, like Peter, and some people criticize this about him. I personally don't. I think it's very different and there's lots of stories like this where it fits. He is missing a father figure. We know his dad is no longer alive. We know his uncle is no longer alive.
Do we even know we have an uncle?
Yeah, well, we know we have an uncle. You know there's an uncle. I see what you're doing there. There's an uncle. But regardless, he's looking
Uncle Tony,
for a father
remember?
figure, right?
Uncle Tony.
Yes. Well, Uncle Tony, he's gone. And then there's Mysterio. That didn't work out either, right? He needs that father figure. I get it. And he's gone on this, adventure with Doctor Strange through Infinity War and Endgame and stuff. And they even reference that in the trailer. We saved the universe together. You can call me Steven. I'm really looking forward to this. And from an outside the story context, it's just always going to be cool to see like Steve Ditko's two biggest co-creations together on screen.
What have you thought, Adam, about, kind of how they've started with Homecoming, continued Far From Home, and now in No Way Home, the idea of Peter having these mentor figures as kind of his guide?
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that because to me, that idea of Cumberbatch being Holland's mentor is kind of the heart of it for me, because I think that was, for me, was the most grounding and at least most emotionally connective part was his relationship with Stark, right? That father-son relationship, at least that's what, to me, elevated this whole new series with Holland to a new height. And I feel like I thought that when Stark, died, that it's like, how do we then replace that? Or are we just going to get lost, right? And so I love this idea. I think Strange is the perfect character for that to be. And I think without it, I think the series would flounder. I think.
And I could see, again, I'm willing to into existence at this point when we continue on with Spider-Man in the MCU. We've got the college years. I think you can still have mentors, but they don't have to be as prevalent as they are in his initial of these movies.
Sure.
How they much have been a big part of his journey at that point. So again, I wouldn't say get rid of them, but Peter needs to stand on his own 2 feet. And I think by the end of this movie, whichever Peter continues to stand on their own 2 feet will be very interesting at that point. Right. The article kind of hints around this idea, and we do this as fans a lot, the expectations of No Way Home versus the reality. Kevin Feige's talking about the rumors, saying that rumors are fun because many of them are true and many of them are not true. The danger is when you get into the expectations game and wanting people to be excited about the movie they get and not disappointed about the movie they don't get. And we on this show have talked about this and wrestled with this over and over again when it comes to the Disney Plus shows and the movies at that point. Brent and I, we enjoy the whole part of this of fandom that we do enjoy is coming up with our theories and seeing where they're going next and thinking about the hints towards the future. But we also don't get so wrapped up in our own rumors or theories to let it dominate, saying, "Oh, this is crud." It's part of the fun. But if you get too deep into it, you're gonna be sorely disappointed many, many times.
Right. Like when you think that your theory is what it should be, and they've somehow let you down. You made up something in your own mind. They don't even know you, and then you're mad because they didn't do what you thought. That's maybe crossing the line. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Mephisto method, right? And it really hit strong from WandaVision, and so many people, Travis Snell, got so married to the idea that we were going to have Quicksilver from the Fox X-Men universe that they couldn't see, like, ultimately that's not the way it was going. And I still think it's funny. I think it's great stunt casting and I had fun with it, but I am willing to throw out my theories like crazy. You guys have heard me talk about what I think might happen regarding Spider-Man post MCU and what Spider-Man is around, or post this movie and what Spider-Man is actually in the MCU and what Spider-Man is not in the MCU. I will die on those hills just because I think it's fun. And when I'm totally wrong, okay, I don't care. It's fun to guess stuff right. Be like, yes, I knew it. And it's also fun to be like, I did not see that coming. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm just an easy mark. I'll take both.
Yep.
If I'm right, great. If I'm wrong, great.
And you know, we all get Ralph Bonered sometimes. It's part of the
We do, especially Travis Snow.
Yeah. All in the game in the chat saying he later becomes a mentor himself to Miles. Yeah, again, Miles in live action will be really awesome to see. S-Pub saying Mephisto, Nightmare, Grim Reaper, Omega Red, Wolverine confirmed. Yep, I love that. I love that character. That's an amazing character. It's such a long history.
I am ready. I'm ready to watch that character. I still think whenever I think back, to the characters that I feel like the most, speaking of these theories, et cetera, the things I was most sad about, is my favorite Marvel comic of all time is Barry Windsor Smith's Weapon X. Right, that's my favorite run. It's what teleport, at least for me, early reading that, like, oh, superhero characters can have depth and maturity. It really starts changing everything for me, and that in his art. And you just remember all that amazing, like that metal helmet he had with the red visor and killing the bear and all these things. It was just like, it was so primal. And I feel like, I have to pretend that that no one's ever attempted that Gavin Hood's movie didn't try to dig into that, because like that's in my heart, that's the story from the cinematic standpoint that's never been told yet, and I keep like waiting on that theory. Like, when can I get that? Because that's the thing I want the most is that tale, I think.
No, it's good. And this cool scene that Tom Holland's been talking about, a sequence, for the last couple of months at that point, and he referenced it yet again in this Empire article. Brent, what's he talking about?
Yeah, he says it was one of the coolest scenes he's ever shot. It's got Aunt May, it's got Happy Hogan, and a special guest star. He says it's 4 people sitting at a table having a conversation about what it's like to be a superhero, and it was amazing. He goes on to say, the other day we watched the scene, my brother and I, and our jaws were on the floor. So, of course, theories are going crazy. Who is the 4th character, talking about being a superhero? Well, Aunt May, she can kind of talk about it from her perspective of being the parent of a superhero. Happy Hogan, of course, he's kind of been in the middle of stuff a few times, but really he's still always been on the sidelines. Who else could possibly be in this and know what it's like to be a superhero? Well, to me, what the obvious answers are probably one of the other Spider-Men. But of course, there is a certain devil of Hell's Kitchen that people are also thinking about as well. And we all know that's who I personally want to see join the MCU proper more than anybody. So I'm excited to see it.
So Brett, join the MCU proper. Were you a fan of what happened with the Netflix show or no?
I love the Netflix show. It's just not in the MCU proper.
That's true. That's true.
Awesome, amazing Marvel. It is one of the greatest comic book television shows ever. Like, if you tell me it's your favorite, I totally get it. I love that series, but it's just not part of the MCU. And Spider-Man and Daredevil, it is one of my favorite team ups there is. Like, Daredevil's pretty much my second favorite Spider-Man character. I've wanted them to be on screen together, live action, since it was Maguire and Affleck in the suits. And so I'm like, this is the closest we've ever been. I'm like, I want this more than I want Maguire and Garfield. I will say that every time, all the time, until I want them. I want Charlie Cox and Daredevil more.
What about you? What about you, Adam? Are you kind of believing some of the rumors? I mean, ever since that Boss Logic fan poster came out of there's a spider in the kitchen at that point. So
I mean, I kind of think that that as far as like the rumors about what this could be like, I guess here's what I should say this is that the idea of, as you speak about here, about like this layering of Spider-Men, right? And that it would be maybe my hope, right, is like, I think all the games sort of present this idea that maybe Holland becomes Miles' mentor, right? And then does Maguire become that mentor, right? And do we get this echoing of Spider-Man as we've seen them in live action? Do they all enter the same, are they all Spider-Man in parallel universes, right? Is this kind of what you're implying here? Because I think that's what, when I read this article and I'm thinking about the multiverse, that's what's in my head, particularly after the animated series where there was all the versions, right? That wouldn't it be interesting if it was all of the live action actors become these versions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be a lot of fun. I've thought for years, it's like, let Tom Holland stay in the MCU, but bring back like Andrew Garfield, to play Peter
Totally.
Parker in the
Garfield.
Venomverse, right? Like I think Andrew Garfield was a great Peter Parker. I love his Peter
I did
Parker.
too.
I think it would be awesome to see him in the Venomverse as the Spider-Man. Obviously, that's clearly not the route they seem to be going.
No.
Fine. And I think again, also I'll just say it, and as bad as I want Daredevil, if he's not in the movie, okay, he's not in the movie. I'm still gonna grade and review the movie I saw, not that aspect. Eventually I'll see
the hope
so
that yeah.
But I still think it's possible at the end of this movie that Tom Holland's Peter Parker is literally no longer in the MCU. He's in a different universe, probably the Venom one. But we know there is still another movie on the contract for a Spider-Man team up. Spider-Man is going to be in a Marvel team up at some point. We don't know necessarily which Spider-Man, though. That's why I think it's possible Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness could bring in his Spider-Man, even for just a little scene. I think it's possible. If it doesn't happen, no big deal. But if it does happen, cool. That'd be fun too.
And that's a good segue to the last part of the story itself. Holland's last ride. Tom Holland says, "One more day's work on No Way Home, which will be bittersweet day." Bittersweet, how so? Surely this cannot be his last day as Peter Parker. He says, "I honestly don't know. It's the first time since I got cast as Spider-Man that I don't have a contract. And it's really difficult for me to talk about because there are so many things I'd love to talk about that would help me embellish what I'm trying to explain, but I can't because it would just ruin the film." So, I mean, again, theories are bound by that. And he, quote unquote, doesn't have a contract anymore. And so I don't think they're worried about this movie not doing gangbusters. I don't think there's...
I don't think that's the concern. I don't.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with you. But also, part of me wonders, do you say, think about Disney, between COVID, between maybe what could happen with the loss of long-term play in China, the bringing of Spider-Man, Venomverse, how this all is going to fit together, that they maybe even internally are like, we need to examine our new approach, which is why there's no contract, right? Mm-hmm. That maybe it's less like a narrative statement, because sometimes I feel that like in our business that like something is kind of gets spun off in the press as a narrative statement, but really it's maybe internally people are being like we are trying to figure out how we're going to actually redesign our future with the changes of financial changes, right? And okay, if China really is going to come off the table like really long term, like we need a new strategy over here. We need, you know what I mean? I wonder if some of it is that.
Yeah, and I was reading this and I'm like, well, again, there's the whole thing about a Spider-Man in another Marvel movie, but if he truly doesn't have another contract, well, him saying this kind of stuff to me is like his agent saying, you need to talk about this in the press to help drum up support so we can get you a pay raise for your next round of movies. And Holland has said so many times how he will play this character as long as they let him. And I truly believe him. Like you can tell when people are phoning it in. I truly believe him, but he needs to do what he can to get the biggest payday. It'd be irresponsible of him not to try and go for the biggest payday possible. And I don't see them not just doing it. Like they're not going to say, oh, you're demanding too much money and cut them loose and start over. Like Sony would be. I know we've all questioned some of their moves in the past, but I genuinely don't see them making such a boneheaded move as to let Tom Holland go.
I mean, remember, they make bonehead moves. They're not WB. You're not Warner Brothers.
Right. So they have hope for them at least. I don't see it. So I truly believe that this is not the last time we will see Tom Holland in a movie as Spider-Man. But you know what? Even if it was, think of how much he had. A solo trilogy, plus he was in 3 massive team-up movies in smaller roles, sure, but we had 6 appearances by him. I can't. Even
it's
if
a pretty epic legacy. That's an epic legacy.
I can't be upset. I can't be upset with that at all.
Oh, yeah.
No.
On the game, I think he's speaking towards a lot of us Daredevil fans. I think all 3 of us are consider ourselves among that. Speaking of fan expectations, if Charlie Cox doesn't show up as his attorney in the movie, the fans, I'm sure, will be cool and rational about it.
I will be. I will be okay with it. But and I like how he called him his attorney because I don't think we're actually seeing Daredevil. I think we're seeing Matt Murdock.
Yeah. No, I think that's the right way to lead it in, though, right? Is to have him show up as the attorney. And when that happens in the theater, we're just going to go, it's going to be a great moment. Yeah.
You're going to see that cane clicking around. You pan up and see those amazing red eye glasses at that point. Oh, those shades.
It's going to be an explosion in the theater, right?
Yes.
And then you got the GA Maleficent. Why is everyone freaking out about it? It's just a blind guy.
It's a guy in a suit. Why do you care? Because it's the guy in a suit.
It is the guy we have been waiting for a long time. Yeah.
So when we started getting hints of, this article was coming out, Webb, and it's put in the article, Webb kind of calls this Spider-Man, this movie, No Way Home, it's Spider-Man Endgame. And the way we've seen the trailers for the Eternals have Earth-ending mission and just what we know about Multiverse of Madness, I messaged Brandon saying, I've got a couple of questions regarding this, and I'm surprised we kind of haven't stumbled upon this idea. Is like, we're potentially having the next 3 movies, starting with Eternals next week, have major Endgame-like events. Do you think that this will hurt or make whatever ends Phase 4 seem a bit lacking?
I think it's a reasonable question. I feel like they're also different from each other. And look at what came before them: Spider-Man Far From Home, which was not a world-ending event; Black Widow, not a world-ending event, and set in the past, so the world's going to survive even if it was. And then Shang-Chi, I guess potentially a world-ending event, but it never escalated to that point. And then looking at what comes out after them, Thor, Black Panther, and the Marvels, we don't know what those scales are going to be, so we can't really comment on those 3. I'm not too worried about it, because I think in general they need to have a balance between the smaller scale stories like your Black Widows and the big bombastic stuff like what we think Eternals is going to be next week. And as long as they do that, and maybe the original plans, this wasn't the original release orders. There was a time Doctor Strange came out before Spider-Man No Way Home, and so maybe with all the COVID shakeups, they didn't necessarily plan to have these 3 back to back initially. I think it'll be okay that they are, though.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I agree. That was not part of the initial plan. And I have good friends that work at Disney on the accounting and marketing side. And like, this was like a bit of a nightmare for them to do. Have the 3 theatrical MCU movies, essentially almost back to back. And what that is. I mean, I feel like, one thing that we, as we closed Endgame, right, and we open up this new can of worms, right, it's kind of this, the multiverse being this thing. I think that like that you have a good warning voice to it, right? That like world ending is going to start to get a little, it'll get old quick if it isn't used really sparingly in its times, right? Especially because as soon as you enter the multiverse, you realize, wait, the consequences of this Spider-Man aren't that serious, because there's another one to the left of it, or there isn't a. And so I think that's the only danger. I mean, I think going forward in the multiverse is to not burn it out, because it'll start to make the other movies around it, especially once you start having a multiplicity of the same character, have really low stakes. I think is the danger of it.
Yeah, it just kind of struck me when thinking about how they're building all this stuff up. I mean, these are major things. So, we kind of mentioned another part of my question, but the last part of it, in the chat we had a few things. S-Bub saying depends on how soon we get Secret Wars or what happens in F4. All in the game. Got to manage expectations a little better with a quote like that. Yeah, definitely. And the last part of this is saying, and having this happen, will audiences' expectations or opinions be hurt when, because it's not if, it's when the next movies kind of take a step back and don't have these quote unquote end game world ending type events? How will they respond positively, or will they say, oh, well, it wasn't that huge of a thing?
I think it'll be the former. I think they'll respond positively, because not just do they have the movies, but that we're also getting the Disney Plus shows. And we've seen like the phenomenon that was WandaVision, and there's so many more subscribers to Disney Plus now. And WandaVision wasn't a world-ending thing. It was just one little town, right? Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it was on a national stage, but it wasn't like a world-ending event. What if? Okay, sure. Multiversal stuff. I'll give you that one. That was going to wipe out everything, but it was with a different cast of characters. Loki. went a totally different way, and you could argue it did the opposite. It wasn't destroying the multiverse, it was effectively opening the door to the multiverse, creating the multiverse. So, and Hawkeye certainly coming up doesn't look like it's probably going to be, you know, a world domination type thing, or Ms. Marvel probably
that would
isn't.
be interesting if Hawkeye brings about.
I mean, hey, I'm sure Kate Bishop will help him out, but
Yep.
ultimately, like with those in, that still gives us like that MCU fix for the smaller, more personal stories as well. And no, not there's more people who see the movies and watch the shows, but the amount of people watching those shows is going up and up and up as they get more and more subscribers. So I really don't think it's too big a concern.
I agree. But I think what I feel like with WandaVision, I feel like it was a really special show. I felt like, you know, with Loki and with Winter Soldier, they were maybe more what you would expect. WandaVision was a truly, I think, a special TV show. I felt, you know, and I feel like if they could execute things like that on a not necessarily a regular basis, but you know, as every one of them, but that kind of show was so great because it didn't, like you're saying, Brett, it didn't turn into a world-ending moment. It didn't and it was a one small town, but it was such a unique expression of it that like you can keep coming back to that well because you're not just like bashing the adrenaline glands and that's all you got to offer, right? Like that was really special, I felt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm with you all on that one. I mean, again, I'm not one of these toxic Marvel. At least I don't think I'm one of these toxic Marvel fans necessarily. Because again, I don't need every movie to be this world-ending kind of thing. I like the character-driven stories. I do still enjoy watching Black Widow, and the differences what we get with the Disney Plus shows of focusing even further on a smaller group of characters on a different kind of journey. What we have potentially with the upcoming Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, Moon Knight, and seeing exactly other parts of the MCU that we only had dreams would ever see the light of day beyond a comic book. So
I agree. Moon Knight is a personal, very excited for that. The Charlie Houston, Dave Finch. I don't know if you guys ever read that storyline. That storyline really set in my heart Moon Knight that has like it has sat within me, and I've also waited for that day. So I'm very pumped about that.
Yeah, we know Travis Snell, our illustrious head of the network, is a huge Moon Knight fan. So I think he'll be a very frequent guest back on this show when those episodes drop. So
Moon Knight, the current run of Moon Knight, its first issue just hit Marvel Unlimited this week. Yes, so I'm excited to read it.
Yes, it is. It's been quite a fun read at that point. I could definitely agree with you on that. So any more things we want to talk about regarding this article before we head on to our little small bits of news?
I think we're good.
All right. All right, let us take our second ad break before we get into the quick hits of news. So again, listeners, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud. So give you that 3 count to turn that volume down. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. Well, it was looking for a while there, and to some extent, we only had one little news story, but we had a few that had some interesting discussion points as it came up, and we'll continue on with our Spider-Man discussion by looking at a Venom spinoff movie. It is the Hashtag Show put out a story that a spinoff show featuring Agent Venom is in development at Sony. They say that we can exclusively share that, like in the comics, the Venom symbiote will find a new host, and that Flash Thompson in the comics, he becomes Agent Venom. That will be more or less the story here. And at some point, Venom will separate from Eddie and bond with Flash. They're hearing that this version of Flash will skip over the connection to Peter Parker and instead focus on him being a wounded veteran who Venom bonds with. They are apparently looking for a quote-unquote Tom Hopper type. As always, it doesn't necessarily mean they're looking to cast Tom Hopper, the actor, but as someone of his look and caliber. So
it's cool.
What do you all kind of think about that? I mean, again, Venom, Let There Be Carnage was the most successful kind of Marvel adjacent franchise, beating out the MCU proper ones in its first weekend, which didn't see that coming as much of it did the first weekend, and how it continued to kind of last at that point. what do y'all think? Is this going to be connected to? Is this gonna the symbiote's either gonna spawn or leave Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock to do this, or is this gonna be kind of just taking a different symbiote and moving it on to this new Flash Thompson?
In the comics in general, it was the same symbiote that Eddie had.
Yes.
They had their little split up, their little breakup, and the symbiote ended up joining with Flash Thompson. I'm not surprised that they're looking for someone else. You know, Tony Revolori, who plays Flash in the MCU. He does not strike me as the Agent Venom type. I just don't see it. He's a very different type of Flash Thompson. And so I think that's probably a good move to look for a different one. My best guess is, because right now, basically Agent Venom has a different symbiote on him, right? Like right now he basically has, and I would just kind of expect them to go that route, because I don't see them giving up on the Venom Tom Hardy dynamic. It's working too well for me.
I totally agree with you. I think the echoing of the symbiote, there being a different one, opens up kind of unlimited possibilities for them without tarnishing Tom Hardy, because it's just working. I agree with you. It just works too well. Tom Hardy's just too loved. Woody Harrelson was just too good. It's just like, I don't know that what they created there. I agree. I don't think they would want to let go of that.
Yeah, especially, it's a unique aspect of the character from the comics in the sense that, Eddie with Venom, he doesn't take off the symbiote. Purposely with Agent Venom, Flash is taking on and off the suit so that they cannot be permanently bonded. But what the symbiote learned being with Flash during his time is a very different personality, of less full of rage and compassion, and being the true hero at that point, because he, in Kate's run, at that point, there is many references to what he learned as being with Flash Thompson.
And you know what? Agent Venom just looks cool. Just visually, he just looks cool. And I would like to see what they would do with him in the movies, in live action. So yeah, I'm into it. Sure, sign me up.
Yeah, definitely. As Bubs, this is I remember in Geek First last night, Wyatt Russell as U.S. Agent Venom.
Not my captain. That's all I know.
No, not my captain. All in the game. Always thought Tom Hopper would make a decent Cyclops. Yeah, I would say. See it. Yeah, definitely at that point. So yeah, we'll just have to see what's going on with that and what comes true with that. So next story is also coming from that hashtag show. The Blade casting for a young supporting character is Lilith coming. They can exclusively share that Marvel is casting for a young preteen African-American girl. This character is described as being confident, self-determined, fiery, with there being mention of her tough exterior and more complex, vulnerable side, and surprises and shocks both for her and those around her. The role has been described as being a strong supporting role, meaning that the character is hugely important to the story. The article goes on saying they believe that this is Lilith Drake, who in Marvel Comics is the daughter of Dracula. She grows up resenting and hating Dracula. And while they bounce back and forth in the comics and reconcile or fight, they have a very over-complex relationship, and alluded to the casting call. And so, we've been getting little bits and pieces of Blade and, getting more from directors or writers to now these casting calls. This is going to be another kind of touchstone moment for the MCU, of bringing what was a former property of one of the original 3 of Marvel films into the MCU proper, with an outstanding casting of Mahershala Ali for Blade. We're still a ways away from production and when this supposedly releases at that point. So it's interesting, and I like the idea that we're starting to see a little bit of casting calls.
Yeah, I mean, it's super, super exciting. I was on a Zoom call a couple weeks back with actually Wesley Snipes about another project, and it's taking it to the original Blade, and he's it's just the coolest guy. I love Wesley so much, but I've thought so much about this character of Blade, right, and just how when he landed, first on the screen, how just badass Wesley was, right, and how with all the swordplay and his martial arts level. And I agree. This casting choice with Marshall Ali is just so dope because of the maturity that he brings as a performer. And then with adding this young girl, once again, almost makes me start to feel like this Leon the Professional sort of feeling, right? Where you've got the older character and then the young girl who he's training to be deadly, right? When they say a preteen, and that is exciting. Kind of speaks out to the Logan and X-23, like the seasoned character with the young girl and that development, and that angle on Blade where you kind of have the powerful violent side and then like this intimate mentor side really, I think, would really help add depth to that franchise in the Marvel universe for sure.
Yes, I do believe you're correct on the game. She's in the new Midnight Suns game. I believe that she is in it.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It's true. And there is actually 2 different characters with that name, named Lilith in Marvel. But to me, going with the one that is the daughter of Dracula would sure make a lot of sense when we're talking about the Blade properly.
Totally.
I don't know much about her, but I don't need to know much about her. Daughter of Dracula tells me everything I need to know. Blade, Marshall Ali. I'm good. I'm great. Sign me up.
Right? I'm into it. Just like, oh, I'll take that.
I mean, fantastic actor. He's seen him in several things, including, in Luke Cage's Cottonmouth. Just wonderful. Going to be a wonderful addition.
Wesley killed it in Dolomite and was arguably the best part of coming to America at that point. Yes, all in the game. Yes, he can't. He was very good.
No, Wesley is a legend, and those early Blade movies was first Blade film with him and Stephen Dorff, and Guillermo del Toro, like all of that, set in motion as far as like creativity in Hollywood. It was rad.
Oh, definitely. So we'll definitely be keeping our eye on Blade and more and more casting, and hopefully maybe some ideas of when they're going to start production. So, all right, our last story for tonight, we've got an actor basically pulling it, as we're going to now call it, an Alfred Molina, and just letting the cat out of the bag just because he can. Bill Murray has announced himself that he is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and his debut is in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. In an interview with a German newspaper, Frankfurter Allgemeine, and this has come via the Cosmic Circus, acting veteran Bill Murray has confirmed that he has joined the cast of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. He says, I quote, recently I made a Marvel movie. I probably won't tell you, but never mind. In any case, some people were quite surprised why I decided to do such a project. But for me, the thing was quite clear. I got to know the director and really liked him very much. He was funny, humble, everything you want from a director. And with the cheerleader story, Bring It On, Girls United, he made a movie years ago, which I think is damn good. So I agreed. Although I'm not invested in these huge comic book adaptations as an actor otherwise, he continues on saying, let's put it this way. The director is a good guy. And now I've at least tried out what it's like to shoot a Marvel movie, but I don't think I need the experience a second time. And to come back to your previous question, I have mostly had a good knack for avoiding the nasties of the industry. Fortunately, most good artists are also good people, and at least that's how I experience it, my luck. So Bill Murray,
he doesn't say Peyton Reed and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania,
but
he directed Bring It On. So
yes, so he doesn't say it outright, but read between the lines that he really didn't go full Alfred Molina, but he basically toned the edge of enough that one and done. I know some people. I've enjoyed Bill Murray as an actor in the comedies at that point.
Legend, yeah.
I know recently, I know Lucy Liu's come out and said that she is not a fan and had many, her time on Charlie's Angels. She's had a lot of basically issues with him on set during that time that she's not been shy about. It's like with everyone. It's either your cup of tea or not. Some people consider, I know Travis Snell and others say that very overrated at that point. But again, that's totally an opinion at that point. I don't know what he could be playing, especially that it's one and done. A quote unquote cameo on the game saying possibly as Scott's dad. Sure. I mean, again, you've got the kind of sarcastic humor, snide humor that, Paul Rudd's character Scott Lang brings to it. So what do y'all think? Could he be Scott's dad or something else in this movie?
I have no idea. That's the one that seems like most people seem to be gravitating towards, but I don't know.
It almost seems to make the most sense, and I mean, yeah, I think the draw. Think about it is getting Paul and Bill together. I mean, two unbelievable comedic duo really. And, like, it's a kind of an unbeatable comedic duo, and I think as a father and son, I mean, I just what it calls to me too. I mean, I hate to sound unoriginal in that, but
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, but it was an interesting kind of casting call in the sense of what he's going to be doing. So yeah, we'll have to see. So all right, so that is all the news, and again, just reiterating that next week we're going to be doing straight Eternals at that point. So we're going to hold off the news, maybe build up some news stories, and see what's coming our way. So let us get into some feedback from the last week and listener questions. Brent, I think we only have one this week.
Yeah, from Heinz. I wanted to know, do we think that one of the Sony Marvel movies that were announced could be a Venom Spider-Man crossover? Because they did recently, block a couple dates on the calendar for untitled Marvel movies. Yes, I think that's inevitable. So one of those probably is a Venom Spider-Man. That's the first thing I thought of too.
It has to be. It has to be.
It's as we said, it's the fight that we all want to see. We want to see them on screen together. I know we'll get them, hopefully, courtesy for fingers crossed. No Way Home. But yeah, a proper kind of crossover fight, team up, whatever you have, we definitely want to see it. So yeah, I think that's got to be one of them at that point. So all right, so before our guest Adam is going to take over Fact or Fiction this week, as all our guests get the honor of doing, I'm going to read you all the Fact or Fiction from last week in the voting. All right, so number one, by the end of 2022, the Marvel Studios opening fanfare will have scenes from Disney Plus shows. 90% said fact, 10% said fiction. I know Brent and I were fact on this when these were Brent's questions last week. What do you think, Adam? Will the fanfare change and include the Disney Plus shows in it?
I think the answer is yes. Don't you? I think that has to be a yes. Sorry, my little one was calling off camera here. I think it's yes, right? I think it's going to include it. I think I'm with you.
Yeah. Next one is, let me pull it up. On Disney Plus Day, we will find out that at least 2 of the live-action Spider-Man movies will come to Disney Plus before No Way Home. 45% said fact, 55% said fiction. They also put out there that there would be 4K versions of the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield movies coming out just in time for No Way Home. I wonder why.
Yep. And those come out, November 8th? So.
Yep. What do you think, Adam? Do you think that we're going to finally bring some of the Spider-Man movies to Disney Plus?
I think it's an absolute fact. I think that is the logical play. I'm going to say yeah.
And our last one, Uncle Ben will be directly mentioned or referenced in Spider-Man No Way Home. 83% said fact, 17% said fiction. Are we finally, Adam, going to get a pure acknowledged reference in a live action Marvel movie of Uncle Ben?
I think fiction. I don't think we're going to get it, right? I think they're going to keep letting that be the carrot that never gets delivered.
That'll be interesting.
I don't know. I don't know if Tobey Maguire could make it through the movie without talking about Uncle Ben.
I know, yeah.
He hasn't done it yet. So.
It will be interesting. On the game, before we get into your fact or fictions, Adam says expectation for Disney Plus Day presentation. I from more and more, even when they announced this day, I did not think it was going to be an investor's call like we had last year, where we got kind of like an event kind of thing. I think they're just going to drop some things. I think for us on Marvel Alliance, it is going to be this featurette of looking at where we're heading to in the next year of Disney Plus Marvel shows. I think it'll be maybe a 10-minute featurette kind of looking, we'll break down, but that's where I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, I've been convinced since seeing Shang-Chi the first time that when it says at the end the 10 rings will return, and now there's the rumors or whatever talks of it, I am convinced that is going to be announced. We will find out there is a Disney Plus show related to the 10 rings somehow, or Xiaoling, Shang-Chi's sister, coming that day. That's the big one that I think is coming. That's my biggest. Well, and I think at least some of the Spider-Man movies are coming to Disney Plus as well.
Yeah, you even got a question from All in the Game saying, as the box office guide, think Shang-Chi has a chance to making the 11 plus million. It needs to nudge ahead of Doctor Strange's domestic box office before November 12th when it's made available.
Box Office Mojo's not loading for me. I was going to try and look up how much it's been making the last few days since it's been updated. I'll go ahead and say, since that's not loading, best educated guess is probably not. I feel like $1 million a day feels a little high, but I think it still has a chance to do that before it truly comes out of the theaters. Because just because it's coming to Disney Plus that day doesn't mean it has to come out of the theaters. If it's still selling enough tickets, the theaters will keep it. They'll keep it in theaters longer than that. I think it has a shot at getting there, but I'd probably bet against it at this point.
Yeah. All right, Adam. You are a guest, so you get to talk to us about your fact or fiction. So hit us with what you got.
Okay, so mine are a little bit more crazy than these ones.
That's okay. We like crazy.
That's fine.
So my first one was dealing with, I was thinking, like, how do you recover, Scarlett Johansson from the lawsuit against Disney, right? So my thought was, will Black Widow return as zombie Black Widow? Right? Remember when they did the zombie X-Men, the whole zombie Marvel world? Will she return as zombie Black Widow from the grave? So that way she's disfigured enough that another actress could play the role.
In live action?
And live action and haunt the Marvel Universe. This is the way that they get back at her.
I don't think Marvel wants to get back at her. That's not where the beef was. But I'm going to say in live action, I would say fiction. I honestly don't think we're going to get Marvel Zombies in live action. But if we return to the world of Marvel Zombies and What If, in the animated show, I could see them doing some Black Widow there.
Yeah, fair enough.
Though the heart would love to see any sort of live action Marvel Zombies as a fan of it. I would have to say, yeah, I think we're stuck in animation for a little bit at that point. But yeah, some fiction. What do you think? Do you about that? Are you factoring?
I'm probably, realistically, fiction. Am I hoping? I would love to have
it'd be
live
fun.
action zombie. That's just what it is for me. Like, I've been dying for that, so I threw that out there. My second one here is because what I loved about the WandaVision was the two visions that occurred during the battle at the end, and I love that. And I'm like, will the two visions return in a buddy cop version of a Disney Plus series where they are a buddy cop story with the two visions, the white and the red?
I want it.
What do you think?
I want
it. That's good. You said crazy, but that actually is somewhat believable.
I guess I'll go fiction because the one vision's dead now or gone, but that sounds like so much fun. Just the two of them. I love the two of them talking to each other. The whole ship of Theseus thing. Oh yes,
that's what I needed. That was so epic. That conversation. I'm like, where's that movie? Where's that TV show with those two guys trying to solve cases? So
SBubs has got your title. Vision Boys for Life. I like it. All in the game wouldn't rule out a White Vision Disney Plus show. Yeah, no, I wouldn't rule it out. Again, I like the idea. It just screams 80s buddy TV shows, cops at that point. But yeah, I my brain has seemed to be beating these down and saying fiction. But man, that's a fun concept.
My last one is Quicksilver will actually run backwards in time and make appearance in movies in previous timelines, right? And sorry, not movies, in a TV series. So there'll be a series with Quicksilver where he's bouncing back in time because he's running backwards, if you will, and interacting with characters in the legacy, but through a different point of view. Kind of like how, we had that nice moment with Loki where you came back to the, in the his story when he went for his time travel series, where like you saw him in the Avengers film disappear off into this moment. It would be interesting if Quicksilver was running back in time and going back and revisiting stories, but through a different angle. That one's kind of a lot.
Be a lot.
And I didn't see any smile from Brent, so I think.
No, I like the idea. I like the idea. I don't see them going a full show with Quicksilver. But man, if they did, that would be, especially if they made him a variant of Ralph Boner, that would be something.
Just for the personal satisfaction of everyone who hates the Ralph Boner thing, Travis
Mhm.
Snell, just to have to deal with it again.
I mean,
And,
yeah, why not? Do I think it'll happen? No, but would I be interested? Yeah, I kind of would be
okay,
interested.
so 3 good pitches there. I'll take it. I'll take
Yeah,
it.
again, they're getting wacky in the MCU. We can get a little more wacky.
Right. Well, guys, thank you so much for having me join you here and giving me a moment to speak my what ifs of the MCU. I appreciate you bringing me on the show, Chris, as always. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, definitely. Yeah, and make sure to drop those in the notes so I can put those out on Sunday. Thank
Absolutely.
you
I
so much,
certainly will, my
Adam.
friend.
Again, check out his Indiegogo. Check him on the feeds. Congratulations on making the thing. You got I think 14 more days.
Yeah, 14 more days. Jump on in, baby.
All right. Take care, Adam.
Take care. Have a great night,
Yeah.
Brent. Chris,
Thank
care,
you,
guys.
Adam.
Thank you. Well, those were a lot.
Those are fun.
Those were a lot of fun. So I know you have one because
one.
it's Eternals related, and you want to get it out there before.
I do, and it is simply Eternals will be the first time we hear the word mutant in the MCU.
First time we hear mutant in the MCU.
We know in the comics they're tied to the mutants. They're kind of connected to the origins of the mutants. I feel like they've had enough time. This could be just to hear the word.
We have talked about on this show. I think even Travis and I have talked about it, and I am. This is the way to do this in the sense of, because when I remember going over the trailer or breakdown at that point, I called out how when the Celestials came here, there was a way what they did to the human race. They basically they're responsible for the mutant gene in a very layman's terms. I know I don't want to get too deep canon at that point, but in so many ways, they are directly responsible for mutants existing in the Marvel 616 universe. So I'm going to go with fact because I want us to start seeing where mutants in the MCU. And if this is the quickest way to do it, I'll buy it, because I think if they set it up correctly like they did in the comics, I think it's very doable.
Yeah, and I'm a fact. And just to be clear, I'm not saying we're going to see the mutants. Wolverine is not popping up. Professor X is not, just the word. Acknowledgement of that offshoot of the human race.
Yeah, so it'll be good. Yeah, especially with everyone, even though it seems very quote unquote divisive of a film between the fan community. I think what is united is this end credit scene, one of 2 end credit scenes.
I mean,
one of
the
them,
fan community hasn't seen it yet, to be fair. It's only the critics that have really seen it.
Yeah, so, but I guess I'll correct. The critics have been very united in the sense of the end credit scene is quite spectacular. So we'll have to see. We'll see in I think my showing's at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, so I should hopefully be home by now.
Yeah, I won't be, but it'll be getting close to wrapping up by this point for me.
But yeah, so all right, we will put that out there, and along with Adam's three Factor Fictions, we got 4 of you. We'll review those when we go back to our normal show after Eternals. So, but yeah, all right. Our last topic, our last thing of the night is Hawkeye issues 3 and 4. Again, I'll keep on saying it. I'm enjoying reading this, especially when it gives me opportunity to see scenes and sequences and how they have changed or been altered in the trailers that we have seen for Hawkeye. So what did you think about starting with issue number 3?
This was a fun issue. I love the non-linear storytelling of it, jumping back and forth. And you got the car chase and this through line of him talking about his 9 terrible ideas he had this one day. And it starts off, this is only my 3rd worst terrible idea. And the countdown. And I have to call out that hilarious panel where he's naked, jumping, shooting his bow, but they censor him with the Hawkeye and the purple mask over him. Absolutely hysterical. Such a fun issue.
It is, especially with the playoff between him and Kate Bishop. I mean, even though in the comics they have known each other for a lot longer than in what we're gonna say at the show, I like it. Why do you still have a phone with a cord on the wall? And Hawkeye goes, how do you know it was me? He said, who else would be calling your sad ass?
Awesome.
But I love that in the sense of the car chase, in the trailer for the show, it's Clint driving and Kate Bishop is the one firing it all. In this case, it's Clint doing the firing of all the different trick bows. And I like how the issue focuses on all the different trick bows, especially when she calls out, why do you have a boomerang bow? Well, because when you fire it, it'll come back at you. I said, why do you want it to come back at you? And of course, knowing what we know about, certain things that are subtly dropped at that point, we know this will come back and play into it. And yes, it does help her, take down the gunman before he shoots and kills her. But man, I also was interested. It kind of made me chuckle a lot when he's getting changed in the car, and she kind of looks him down as he's changing. He's like, "Come on, really? You really?" With the abs and stuff like that, it's like, oh, okay, so you got a little thing for Clint.
Yeah, that scene was pretty funny too, and he's just yelling at her to keep driving and stuff. And I like how we've seen this in the trailers. We're getting some sort of homage to this in the trailers, but they're flipping it, flipping who's driving and who's shooting all the arrows and stuff. And like I said, this issue, like it was just a lot of fun, just bouncing back and forth, and then the whole counting down of the terrible ideas. Definitely like this one.
Very good. In the fourth issue, we get a changeover in artists and colorist at that point. We go to Javier Pulido and Matt Hollingsworth colorist at that point. I think, yeah. And this style of art, and if you've listened to my show, World's Finest True Believers, I'm a huge, huge, huge Darwin King fan. I love pretty much everything that he has ever done in his illustrious career. This artist is definitely getting me some Darwin vibes.
Yeah, I could see that. I hadn't thought of it, but you pointing it out, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. This one, I know I've read this story before, but it wasn't until like way at the end that I remembered like the twist of who was Madame Mask and stuff, like who's actually wearing that mask. I'm like, oh yeah, it's gonna be her. It's gonna turn out to be Kate, and then you turn the page, sure enough, it's Kate.
Yeah. Especially, how he's trying to, this tape has supposedly gotten out where it shows an Avenger killing someone, basically a Black Ops mission. Is what Hawkeye used to be at a point in his life, doing Black Ops like this and going to, of all places, Madripoor to basically get this tape back in their possession before someone else gets a hand on it and releases it to the world. I am so enjoying the humor in this, in the sense of how much of a smartass Clint is at different points, especially, talking about where is that illustrious black card that she has to go digging out.
Yeah, it really gave me vibes of that Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode where they go to Madripoor and they're just trying to get the intel and stuff. And it's basically what he's doing here. And yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, I definitely caught that Wilson Fisk appearance in this episode. I'm like, oh, can we pull that for certain TV show here in a few weeks?
Yeah,
but
especially some of the.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, especially like all the C, D, F level villains that are bidding on this.
This one didn't feel like, it had action and stuff in it. Didn't feel as action packed as, say, the previous issue that we just talked about, where the entire thing was centered around a car chase. But it was fun, and the art style for it really, really did work really strong. It's different. Obviously, it's different artists. You can tell that's pretty apparent right away. But if they're going to switch artists, give David Aja a break, it's a pretty good one to do.
Oh yeah. So we get so we will read the 5th and 6th issues in 2 weeks. So again, next week we're just going straight Eternals, viewing as we do normal review. So in 2 weeks, Hawkeye issue 5 and 6. So all right. So volume 75 is in the books. And again, want to thank Adam for coming on. Again, make sure to check out his Indiegogo. All his information and the Indiegogo will be in the show notes. So again, want to appreciate him coming on the show. Brent, tell everyone how they can follow you and plug your show.
Sure. Fans Without Borders is the other podcast I'm a part of. Our next episode of that is intended to be our Eternals review as well. So I'm going to talk a whole lot of Eternals next weekend. Brentak Prime on Twitter. So and then let's go ahead and mention that we were on the most recent DC Alliance as well. We hopped on there. We fulfilled our obligations. We bullied them into reviewing Titans, and we paid for it.
Don't fall into the bullying.
I with the way it worked out, I'm just gonna give them that one. I'm gonna let them have it.
Okay.
I'm gonna let them have it, and we will
such
never
bullies,
never make
bullies.
that mistake again.
Well, we're just trying to give them content. We just didn't
were.
realize the entire season was going to be a cluster. So
As listeners, we were telling them the content we wanted to hear.
yes, exactly. Yes, definitely check out our joining of them at the episode as well in DC Alliance this week. That was a lot of fun. Again, plug in our sponsor, organicpricebooks.com. Use that code MarvelGU at checkout for $2 off every single order. And Manscaped, 20% off every order and free shipping using code GWAPOD. If not saying I wanted to say I don't, be him getting covered up by his Hawkeye image. We were not able to tell if Hawkeye manscapes. So
he definitely has a lawnmower. He's got the lawnmower.
It's got the lawnmower. Yeah, we'll give that at that point.
Absolutely.
So, yep. And all right, so yes, you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Balgo. You can follow the show on Twitter at Marvel a Podcast. You can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network at GWAPod Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide feedback, ask questions, give us fact or fiction, tell us your theories of Eternals, and we'll be looking forward to hearing those in the next upcoming weeks. Continue to rate and review our solo feed and the GUA network feed on Apple Podcasts, whichever platform of choice may be. Thank you all for joining us in the chat. We really appreciate it. Thank you all for listening. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, Brent. Post credits, light week, news week. But you found something this morning that kind of sparked kind of our thinking juices of what the great Kevin Feige can put in motion.
Yeah, last night I was watching the Marvel Studios assembled What If, the making of What If, and there's this line that kind of jumped out at me at the time. And then this morning, when you're asking about any post-credit ideas, and I see this article, this write-up on this line come, I'm like, oh, that right there, that's it. Kevin Feige said, quote, "I really believe the deepening fictional mythologies is a way to appreciate them more, is a way to understand them more, and look at them in a different way. They've got now 2 seasons of What If ideas underway. That's some of the best storytelling we've ever had that you may see spin into other mediums. It's really the most uniquely beautiful animated series I've seen in a long time." So we've definitely talked about this before. There's been rumors of it before. I kind of feel like Feige just confirmed we are going to see at least somebody from the What If show in another medium. Most people assume that will be a live action television show or a movie. I'll go ahead and mention it could technically be a comic, I guess, as well. I still think Captain Carter, I think she's coming to live action, though. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think what they've done with What If is, again, and it made the most sense to drop it immediately after Loki, kind of exploring this idea of multiverses, because I think we were hoping to see in the episode after Sylvie drops all the time bombs in different areas, we see all the branches that point, oh, we're going to explore some really screwed up universes. We didn't, and that's okay, because we have What If to kind of see what would happen at that point. No, I think Captain Carter is the low hanging fruit right now. We're all expecting it. We've heard a lot of rumors about it. I would love to see, again, I put it out there as a factor of fiction. It is a long shot, but the Guardians of the Multiverse, again, if the multiverse is gonna, they've had these so-called meetings of the rules for the multiverse in the MCU. It would stand to reason that someone's going to have to defend the multiverse, and why not these Guardians? Again, my heart really wants it. I know it's a long shot, but I would love to see some aspects of these characters come in. I know we talked about it with Marvel Zombies, live action Marvel Zombies. That would be a big step from what Marvel really wants to do. But again, there's so many great characters that they could put this in, or even give them their own spin-off animated show, like we heard they were considering with T'Challa Star-Lord.
Seeing Chris Hemsworth as Party Thor would be a lot of fun. I know he voiced him, but like to see it in live action, I think would be a lot of fun to do. And I mean, I realistically, I don't know about getting all of the Guardians of the Multiverse, but we could surely get a subset of them, right?
Oh,
we
yeah.
could at least get a few of them to pop up for an adventure. That would be a lot of fun. I think most people, myself included, are probably looking at some sort of cameo from at least one of these characters in most likely Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. All in the game just said they would bet on a live action Captain Carter Disney Plus show that involves traveling through the multiverse. That'd be a lot of fun. A live action Disney Plus show for Captain Carter, I think, would be a blast. Or even just, honestly, it doesn't even have to be live action. I'd take an animated one too as well. But of course, that'd be the same medium. But I love the idea.
Yeah, no, I'll take it even more, expanding the ideas, because the big thing in there, still sticking by this, that the What If series will not introduce new characters before they have a MCU proper introduction. So they're sticking by that, and again, that's fine. It is a fun way for the general audience who has just seen the movies to come into an exploration of a different side. So yeah, it's pretty rare for Feige to say something more definitive than he's used to saying, well, maybe, or can't confirm that, or maybe one day we're thinking about it. This seemed as much definitive as that man could say.
And it was in a Marvel Studios produced project. It wasn't even like a reporter, like a press junket. No, like he could have stopped that line from going out anytime he wanted, and nope, he let it go through.
He could have sniped himself,
He could have, yes.
All right, so thank you all, listeners. We will see you next Friday night for Eternals.
See ya.